We're going to review the Unit 6 study guide. Feel free to jump around to just the problem numbers that you feel like you need to review. In number 1, it tells us a coffee shop is holding a sale today only. Every item on the menu is 20% off. Write the sale price of each item on the line provided and show your work below. So we're talking about 20% off, so they're getting a discount. Let's just start with the hot coffee, and that has an original price of $2.45, and we're getting a 20% discount. So remember that when we hear percentage, we always think of 100. So percents always go out of 100. And then we're trying to figure out how much 20% of the coffee is. So we don't know what the 20% is. So our x needs to be lined up with 20%. Our original price of the coffee, or total price, was $2.45. So this is going to help us set up our proportion. And then we just have to cross multiply to solve for this. So when we cross multiply here, we get 100x equals 49. And then to solve for x, we have to divide by 100. So x equals 0.49. Now, x was representing 20% of 245. So that's how much this person will save if they're buying a cup of coffee. But the original price was $2.45. They're saving 49 cents. So the new price of this cup of coffee will be $2.45 minus 0.49, which gets us 1.96, or $1.96. So it wouldn't make sense that they're only going to pay 49 cents if it's only 20% off. So we have to just subtract that amount that they're saving to get that new price. In number 2, just as a reference, sorry, before we move on, this iced coffee was $2.36, $3.08 for the cappuccino, $1.96 for espresso, and $3.16 for the cafe latte. So it's just the same process. You would just replace where it says $2.45 here, put the original price of each of the rest of them, and then subtract the original price minus whatever you get for x to solve for each of those. So now in number 2, we have Georgetown and Franklin are 9.7 inches apart on a map that has a scale of 1.1 inches to 15 miles. How many miles apart are the real cities? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So we can set up with a blank proportion here, and our numbers are all within here, and the units that they're talking about are inches and miles. So if I put inches on top on this side, I need to put inches on top on the other side. And then I can go back through and fill in the numbers that I need. So 9.7 was inches. My next number is 1.1 inches. And my final number is 15 miles. And the 15 miles was in the problem along with the 1.1 inches. So those need to stay together. So I need to put 15 miles underneath 1.1. The question said how many miles apart are the real cities. So on the map, they were 9.7 inches away. We don't know how many miles that is, so x needs to go under 9.7. We cross multiply here, and we get 145.5 equals 1.1x. And to solve for x, we have to divide by 1.1 on both sides. So x equals 132.27, and our units here are miles because it said how many miles apart are they. In number 3, the question says Michael's truck can go 18 miles per gallon. The slash here means per, and when we think of per gallon, per hour, per dollar, that's per one. So per 1 gallon, you can go 18 miles. The tank can hold 21 gallons, so how many miles could Michael drive on a full tank? So we can set up our blank proportion again, and then fill in our 2 units. So we have miles and we have gallons. If we decide to put miles on top on this side, gallons on the bottom, we just have to do the same thing on the other side of our equation. And then we have 18 miles as our first number, so that can go in with miles. And it said 18 miles per gallon. Per means 1, so the gallons with 18 are just a 1. Our last number that they give us is 21 gallons, so I can't put that with miles. It has to go on the bottom with gallons. And we're trying to figure out how many miles could he drive. So we don't know how many miles goes with 21 gallons. So this is our proportion that we end up setting up. When we cross multiply, 1 times x is 1x equals 378. We divide by 1 on both sides, but anything divided by 1 is just itself, so x would equal 378, and that's miles. In number 4, the problem says that Dwight sells 45 reams of paper per day. So again, we have that per word again, so that's 1 day. He can sell 45 reams of paper. If he continues at this rate, how many days will it take Dwight to sell 360 reams of paper? So set up your blank proportion. Our units this time are reams of paper. So I'm just going to do RP for reams of paper. And then days. Whatever we put on top on this side, we have to put on the other side on top. And days will go on the bottom again. We can go through and find our numbers it gives us. So 45 reams of paper goes on top. And that's per day. So 1 day goes with that. And then it says how many days will it take him to sell 360 reams of paper. So 360 is a reams of paper number. We don't know how many days that's going to take, so we put x below it. When we cross multiply here, we get 45x equals 360. And to get x by itself, we have to divide by 45 on both sides. So x equals 8, and our units here are days, so 8 days. In number 5, question tells us that Angela's lunch costs $12.13. If she plans to leave a 15% tip, how much will her lunch cost in all? So important words here are in all. We're dealing with a 15% tip, and her total cost of her lunch was $12.13. So we have a percentage again, and remember that percent always needs to go out of 100. So we can set that up first. And then we're trying to figure out how much she's going to leave for a tip, and that'll be 15% of her original bill. So we don't know what 15% will be, so x needs to be on top with 15, but we do know that her whole bill was $12.13. We can cross multiply. When we do that, we get 100x equals 181.95. And I'm just going to rewrite it up here so we can show the rest of the work. Our final step to get x here is to divide by 100 on both sides. So x will equal 1.8195. Now we're talking about money, so we need to round our answer to the nearest cent. That cuts it off right here. The number after where we're trying to cut off is a 9. 5 and above, give it a shove. That means that this 1 needs to become a 2. So really, the amount of tip that they're going to leave is $1.82. But the question said, how much will her lunch cost in all? So we need to say, well, the tip was $1.82, but all her food cost $12.13. So in all, that's going to need to be added together. She will pay $13.95 for her lunch with the tip included. Now we're going to move into similar figures. So we're still using proportions here. It says the two pairs of similar figures are shown below. Solve for x. So in the first set of similar figures, we have two triangles. 12 corresponds to side 3. 20 corresponds to side x. So we can use this to help us set up a proportion. We can say 12 over 20, that's the yellow side over the pink side of our big triangle, will equal 3 over x, the yellow over the pink of our small triangle. So on the bottom I have all my pink, and on the top I have all my yellow. And then they're lined up because we have 12 and 20 came from the big triangle, and 3 and x came from the small triangle. So I've made that hashtag shape that we like to make with our proportions. We just have to cross multiply, so we get 12x equals 60. Final step would be to divide by 12, so x should equal 5. Make sure when you get an answer here that it makes sense. We shouldn't get a number that's bigger than 20 or bigger than 12 really, because this triangle is a lot smaller than the one that was next to it that we were saying was proportional to it. The other way you could have seen it was the relationship between 12 and 3 is that you would have had to take 12 divided by 4 to equal 3. So if you can see that 20 divided by 4 equals 5, that's another way to figure out what x would be. Now in the next one, same idea. 16 corresponds to which side? So you kind of have to look at the angles here. This angle looks almost like a right angle, but it just looks very similar to this one right here. So it looks like they rotated those triangles. So that side, 16, corresponds to the other side, x. They took that triangle and they rotated it around. Now our other set of corresponding sides are 22 and 11. So we can use this to help us set up our proportion again. we can say our yellow side over our blue side of the big triangle equals the yellow side over the blue side of our small triangle. So blue and blue for 22 and 11, and 16 and x were both yellow. So we have our yellow on top, blue on the bottom, 16 and 22 came from the big triangle, and x and 11 came from the small triangle. When we cross multiply, we get 22x equals 176, and we divide both sides by 22 to get x equals 8. Now again, if you could just see that 22 and 11 had that in common, 22 divided by 2 would get you 11, then you could have said, well, then I just need to divide 16 by 2, and that should get me 8 for x. So that's another way you can do that. Now in number 7, it says a man is standing next to an elephant. The man is 6.5 feet tall and casts a 33.2 foot shadow. If the elephant casts a shadow that is 51.1 feet, 51.5 feet, then how tall is the elephant? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So we did a lot of problems like this with the building and the tree, but now it's just a man with a shadow and then an elephant. So here's the elephant with its height and then its shadow. So you can go back and read your problem and label what you know. So the man is 6.5 feet tall, and he has a 33.2 foot shadow. And then it tells us that the elephant casts a shadow that is 51.5 feet. And it then says, how tall is the elephant? So we don't know the elephant's height. So now that we've drawn a picture, we can kind of imagine, well, these kind of look like two similar triangles. So that means I'm allowed to set up a proportion. So I can say 6.5 over the shadow of the man, so all of this is all about the man, can equal x, my other red number, over 51.5. So then on top I have everything about the height. Oops, let's make that red. Everything about the height is on top. Everything about the shadow is on the bottom. This column is all about the man, and this column is all about the elephant. So everything's lined up. We have a nice hashtag. We can cross multiply to get our answer. So 6.5 times 51.5 gets us 334 and 75 hundredths equals 33 and 2/10 x. Divide both sides by 33 and 2/10 to get that x equals 10.1 feet. Moving on to number 8, it says complete the statements given below. And we know that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. So in this first one we have triangle CBA is similar to what? So C is our first letter. C is right here. It's the last letter in the original given statement. The last letter here that it corresponds to is F. So if we want to put C first here, F needs to start. Then they give us B. B was our second letter. The second letter here was E. So that would be E. And then our last letter was A. A was the first letter up here, and D was the first letter. So A and D correspond, so D can go last here. Now, it's not quite done because we still need to write the triangle symbol to say that these two triangles are similar. If you don't include the notation, then we don't know that we're talking about a triangle. In the next one, we have angle A is congruent to what? So angle A was that first letter in its triangle name. So the first letter that it corresponds to in the other is angle D. In the next one, we have angle F. That's our last letter. It corresponds to angle C, so it's congruent to angle C. And then angle E corresponds to angle B. They're both in the middle. This was just asking you to set up a proportion that could be true here. So if I have side AB right here, that's on the bottom, that corresponds to side DE in the other triangle. So that's why they're allowed to be stacked there. So then you just have to fill in another set of corresponding sides. So you could put AC over DF. You could say AC over DF. Or we could have done CB over FE. Those both would have been correct proportions there. Now, in the next one, FD was that blue, and it's over CA, which is also blue. So then we can put pink over pink, or we could do yellow over yellow. Either one would work here. So FD was blue, CA was blue. Pink to pink would be FE over CB, or we could have said FD to CA was equal to DE to AB. Either one of those would have been fine. So you have two options for what you could have filled in there. In number 9, we're talking about if two shapes are similar, then which of the following is always true? So for similar shapes, we know that they are shapes that look similar. They look like the same kind of shape, but they're not exactly the same measures. We'll know that their angles are always congruent to one another, but their sides are just proportional. So the corresponding sides are always congruent. That would be true if we had two congruent shapes, but when we have two similar shapes, all we can say about their sides is that their sides are always proportional. And then about the angles. Corresponding angles are always congruent, or corresponding angles are always proportional. Well, we gave the example of the bookshelf and the whiteboard in the classroom. They're both rectangles that have 90-degree angles all around. If you were to change one of the angles on the bookshelf, it would no longer be a rectangle, and then we can't say that it's similar to the whiteboard anymore because it's not the same shape. So the corresponding angles will always be congruent, but the sides that are corresponding will always just be proportional. In the next problem, it says, what must the value of x be if the two triangles are similar? If you see value, you need to solve for a number. So we're looking for x. We need to set up a proportion. So x is this side of this triangle, and it corresponds to AC. So we could put x over 15, and then we can set that equal to another set of corresponding sides. It doesn't matter which ones you choose, so I could choose 5 and 10, and I'd have to put 10 on top because I put x on top, so they come from that same triangle, and then I would put that over 5, and 5 came from the same triangle as 15. So this is all lined up. Another way you could have done it, you could have said x over 15 equals 20 over 10 using that other set of corresponding sides. It doesn't matter, they both will get you the same answer. If I cross multiply here, I get 5x equals 150, divide by 5 on both sides, so x equals 30. If I check this one, I get 10x equals 300, divide by 10 on both sides, so x equals 30 again. One other way you could do it is you could see, well, 5 to 10 would be 5 times 2. 10 times 2 gets me 20, so 15 times 2 would get me 30, and that's what that side would have to be. That's another way you can see that. Now in our final example, this one was a little tricky because these triangles were rotated. The way you can see that they're rotated is because the right angle is marked here. It's on a different side of the triangle in this picture. So we can also use the triangle names to help us. So we have side AB right here. Those are the first two letters in their triangle. So that corresponds to side XY. AB were the first two, and XY are the first two. So AB corresponds to this side over here, XY. Another set of corresponding sides that we have would be BC, which are the second and third letter, goes with YZ. So we can say that these two sides are both the same color, corresponding. Oops, sorry. Yikes. Let's try that again. Those sides are corresponding. And then in our last set of corresponding sides, AC was the first and third letter, so it corresponds to XC. So now we can go through and just highlight all of these things. So 6 was pink, and the other pink color in here was 3. So there's no other 3s here. So no more pinks. I have 6 down here, and I have a 3 here. Then I can go through and highlight all my blues. So N and 4 were both blue. And then my last color was yellow, and that's for my 10s and my 5s. So now we can go through and use the hashtag method to help us figure this out. So here I have blue to blue, but then pink to yellow doesn't line up. That's not going to work. We will not get a hashtag there. In our next one, we have blue to blue, but then we have pink to yellow. Again, that's not going to work because we're not going to get a hashtag. Here I have yellow to yellow, blue to blue. 10 and N have in common that they are from the same triangle. 5 and 4 are also from the same triangle. So here we got a hashtag. In our last one, we have 3. So pink to yellow doesn't line up. Blue to blue does, but since we didn't have more than that, that's not in line. So the only one that made a true proportion would be option C. Thanks for watching.